Marhaba, right now we're going to talk about the masdar. Al-masdar literally means the source in Arabic, as in the source of a verb. Masadir is the plural, and masadir are a class of word that we don't really have an exact equivalent for in English. Sometimes people refer to them as verbal nouns, which is about as accurate a translation as we're going to get, but it sounds a bit silly, so it's a good idea to just get into the habit of referring to a masdar as a masdar. Masdars are words that express the abstract idea of an action, something close to but not identical to the infinitive in English, or the gerund form of a noun, the ing form. One masdar that you might have encountered already is as-safar, which we might translate, depending on context, as to travel or traveling, the idea of traveling, the abstract concept of traveling. Now, we can't always render an ing word in English as a masdar. Think about the difference between these two sentences in English. We could say, working is hard. We could also say, I am working for the government. In one of these sentences, working is a noun. This thing that is work. Work is hard. We could swap in work. We might choose to skip the ing altogether, right? So we're discussing an idea, an abstract concept. But if I say, I am working, even though I have the ing, it's really kind of a verbal meaning, right? I'm using the present continuous. So in Arabic, we might use the masdar form to translate this sentence. We could say, العمل صعب. Full stop. Work is hard. This thing that is work is hard. One thing we also notice is that since these are abstract concepts that we express with masadir, they're almost always definite, sometimes as the term of an idafa, right? But if I want to say, I am working, we might be tempted to use this masdar, ana al-amal, but that would mean that I am somehow the literal physical embodiment of the act of working, which sounds as strange in Arabic as it does in English. So to express this idea, I am working, I would just use a conjugated verb. I would say, أنا أعمل للحكومة, right? Masadir are something, well, we've seen in our other video about patterns, that verbs have different patterns in Arabic. We typically number them as learners from 1 to 10. And form 1 verbs tend to have masadir that are very variable. Forms 2 through 10, we have a very fixed pattern with very few exceptions. We can usually take a verb, if we identify its form, its wazn in Arabic, then we can sort of deconstruct it and reconstruct it as a masdar. But with form 1 verbs, which constitute a majority of the verbs we know at this point, it does tend to be highly variable. For example, the verb for to live, yaskun. The masdar of yaskun, this thing that is living, is as-sakan. As-sakan. The verb for to know, yarif, in present tense, is al-ma'rifa. The verb for studying, yadrus, our masdar pattern is ad-dirasa. The verb for getting something, acquiring something, يحصل The masdar is al-husul. And this is not an exhaustive list, right? So here we have السكن, الدراسة, المعرفة, الحصول. We have different vowel patterns all along. But you shouldn't let this intimidate you too much, because even though we have a large number of variable patterns, there are patterns, right? And we can use those patterns, again, that sort of musical sense, that rhythmic stress, as an aid for remembering masdar patterns. For example, al-amal, we know that verb, to work, ya'amal. Al-amal, which has exactly the same kind of vowel pattern as a second. Or with ad-dirasa, yadrus, are verbs for reading and writing. Yaqra and yaktub fit into exactly the same pattern. Al-qira'a, al-kitaba, kitaba, qira'a, ad-dirasa, right? We have these stresses. So as you are learning new verbs, and it's a good idea to learn the masdar form as you learn a verb, be sure to memorize the masdar as well, and think about if that masdar fits into any of the other patterns, masdar patterns, that you have encountered previously. As I said, for verb forms 2 through 10, things become a lot more regular, and we can predict very, very accurately what the masdar form is going to be, and that's what we'll see in our next video.